Okay. This is so cool. Women watching. Nice. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Medical Mondays with Dr. O. What an exciting time of fellowship, I'm going to call it. No, of learning. So I'm Dr. Tony Okwesami. I'm a family practitioner, HIV specialist, and I treat substance use disorder in Maryland. Tonight, we have back with us Dr. Luguterah, and I'm going to have her introduce herself and then, plunge into conversation tonight. Our conversation tonight is deep because, as I said a few minutes ago, just before we got on the air, that we don't have any book on parenting. We have things that are, fragmented here and there. So it's with prayer and, trial and error that most of us raise our kids. So we appreciate Dr. Luguterah for our time in coming tonight to assist us, educate us, and help us learn more about these parenting styles that would reduce mental health issues in our population. So Dr. Luguterah, if you please start with introducing yourself, that would be great.
Okay. Thank you for the opportunity, and hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us, or thanks for having me, let me say. My name is Mercy Luguterah. I am Ghanaian American. I have a background in social work, also have a background in behavioral sciences. I am a certified social worker, a certified Montessori teacher. And so I do quite a number of things. And I spent a big part of my adult life in Ghana. My journey started in Europe, where I was born, and then I moved to Ghana with my parents and did quite some number of years there. And then I moved back to Europe, the UK, and then ended up in the US. And in all of those travels, I have been exposed to different cultures, and then working in the school system here and teaching also as an adjunct faculty, teaching behavioral sciences. I find that when it comes to parenting and all the other things, parenting plays a very huge role in the overall wellness of children who later become adults. And sometimes in my life as a social worker, when I'm speaking with adult clients, I would say at least 90% of them can link back to a childhood experience, which resulted in some of the challenges they're having as adults, right? So there's a lot of influence that our parenting can have. And parenting also sometimes depends on our culture and our beliefs, but I wanted to look beyond that and to look at what the facts are. What is the research saying? Let's look more into the principles of parenting rather than the practice of parenting, because with everything you do, the principle is supposed to inform practice, right? And sometimes your practice must change depending on where you are, but the principle can still remain as is. So that adaptability and that flexibility, I find that sometimes as immigrants or African parents or adults, we tend to struggle between the lines. Like, what do we do? What is right? What is the principle? A lot of us are caught up on the practice of parenting as opposed to the real principle or the theory behind parenting and what it does, the outcome of it. So tonight I wanted to go through the principles of parenting. I actually do teach a class on parenting at UMGC. So I thought I would just skim through some of the major points. There's a lot to get to, and I cannot get to all of it in tonight's meeting. So I just thought I would, pick the most important, the starting point of parenting. And hopefully after this, we can ask questions and go back and read some more and take some tips from there. So I wanted to start off by saying, yes, parenting does play a huge role on the emotional outcome of our children who later become adults. So that is why there's a need for huge emphasis on what parenting is all about. And we're going to get to that. One of the important things to remember with parenting is the parenting styles, right? But parenting styles, when we say a parent, who is a parent? It can be a lot of things, not just a biological parent. Our world has changed a lot. Parenting simply means the process or the practice or the pursuit of rearing a child or raising a child, right? So that can be a grandparent, that can be an adoptive parent, a foster parent, an adult, a biological parent, non-biological parent. It could be a friend, a relative. There's so many ways or so many people that are involved in parenting. So that's what a parent is. And we know that in our modern time, there are different kinds of household and therefore different kinds of parenting techniques. So parenting, when you think about parenting, it can be laughter, it can be love, but it also involves pain. It involves responsibility, making decisions. It could involve some kind of arguing, some exhaustion, some struggle, a lot of patience. But a lot of times when we're thinking about parenting or we desire to become parents, we are focusing more on the joyous part of it. Right? It's going to be fun. I'm going to have a kid. I'm going to dress them up. I'm going to do this. We're going to do that together. And we neglect the other side of it that comes with parenting, the exhaustion, right? The drain it can take on you, the challenges, unknown, untold challenges. And if you do have a child with some kind of, developmental delay, that's something that we never really prepare ourselves for. But sometimes it happens and we're caught off guard. We don't know what to do. So parenting is a mix of happy moments, but also challenges and responsibilities that come with it. So if you look through the literature on parenting, there are 4 main parenting styles, right? People can say so many different things, but if you're going by one of the well-known authors on parenting, her name is Diana Boomerang. She is someone who's written extensively on parenting, has done a lot of research in other countries, and not in African continents, but that's where I bring in my expertise as well. But so far, there are 4 main parenting styles. The first one is authoritarian, right? And I'm presenting this in no specific order, but just putting in the 4 parenting styles. Authoritarian. Who is an authoritarian? An authoritarian is the parent that says, it's my way or the highway. It's the parent that says, you're going to do what I say, and that's what it is. You set the rules, you set the boundaries, no negotiation, nothing. Your child just has to listen to you. They cannot have a conversation with you. They cannot have a dialogue with you. You run the household, is your word against everyone else's word. It's more like a patriarchal system or almost like a dictatorship kind of parenting, right? And that is the authoritarian style. For a lot of us that grew up in Africa, a lot of, I would say, our parenting styles, our parents, the way we were parented, a lot more of it was leaned towards the authoritarian parenting style, right? It's my way. What I say, I set the rules, no matter your age, you're listening, and that's it. And so there might be a few people that maybe had other parenting styles, but for most part, it's authoritarian. We don't express our emotions. We just, matter of fact, and we keep it going. That is the authoritarian parenting style. Then we have the permissive parenting style. With the permissive parenting style, that simply means that your child more or less runs the show, right? So you might have rules. For instance, you would say, be home by 6 o'clock, and your child says, well, I'm not going to be home by 6 o'clock. I'm going to come at 8 o'clock. And then your response is, okay, sure, come at 8. Or your child is supposed to clean up their room, and then you tell them you need to clean up your room, and they tell you, I don't feel like cleaning up my room. I'm not going to clean up my room. You're like, okay, no problem. So you're just, you're permissive. The child runs the house, right? So that's permissive parent. You're very lax. You're very, you're not really set. You're not consistent in your guidelines. It can go whichever way. And then you have the uninvolved parenting style. Uninvolved simply means you neglect your child, right? As long as you might provide food for them and shelter, but everything else you don't want to know. How they're doing in school, the kind of friends they have, what their interests are. You don't really want to know. I mean, you don't care about that. As long as you pay the fees and food to eat and clothes to wear, in your mind, you've done your part for your child. So that is the uninvolved, right? The neglectful kind of parent. And then you have the authoritative parenting style. Authoritative means that, yes, I am the parent. I set the rules, I set the boundaries, but depending on your age and the levels of responsibility you've shown, we can negotiate when it comes to certain things. So for instance, I go to the store with you, I'm going to buy food, and you tell me, well, I don't really like this type of food. Can we get this? And maybe I give you the chance to express yourself why you don't really like this particular thing. So we have a dialogue and we reach an agreement. Okay, I will get this for you if you do this, right? Or it's time for you to go to bed, and it's 9 o'clock and you don't want to go, and I say you need to go to bed. And then we strike a deal. I say, okay, right, tonight you have to go. It's a school night. But if you finish your work, if you do XYZ, then, on Saturday, we can have this plan, right? So you are still the parent, you're consistent with your rules, but you make room for your child to ask questions, and you're not offended when they ask questions, right? You create a safe space for them. You create a place for them to come to you, to be able to ask questions, even if your answer is going to be no, but at least you give a chance to listen to what they have to say. Now, all of these parenting styles have corresponding outcomes, right? There are corresponding outcomes for that. So when you look at the parent that is authoritarian, they're saying, do what I say. So what's that going to mean? You're going to, in the end, in a summary, you're going to have a child who can be timid, right? Because they don't have a chance to speak up. They don't have there isn't a space at home for them to have any dialogue. They're afraid, they're timid, and the end result is they could potentially become perpetrators of that same, parenting style. So when they say something, it has to be done because that's all they've known. They've been raised that way. Bear in mind, we said parenting is the idea of raising a child. And when we raise children, they don't remain children, they become adults. And if there isn't a mediating factor to kind of correct some of the things that we got wrong, if they maintain that same attitude, then they also become adults and they continue that authoritarian parenting style. So those are the outcomes when it comes to the authoritarian kind of parent, the dictatorship kind of parent. Then you have the uninvolved parent, right? Who says, yeah, the kid will do whatever they want to do. Now, this is someone who, when they grow up, they have a lot of anger, a lot of resentment. They want to do things their way. They definitely don't feel loved. And the parent will be saying, but I took you to the most expensive school. I bought the most expensive clothes. You lived in one of the wealthiest neighborhoods. Your zip code was an enviable zip code. How can you say that I didn't care about you? What makes you think I was uninvolved? I did all of that. But those are external things. Those are superficial things. When a child is a child, they look for a lot more. Sure, they want to be clothed. Sure, they need a place to sleep. But your child does not know the price of the clothes they're wearing on when they're young. But they know the experience that you gave them. They feel that experience, right? So you could get something that is $1,000, and that's fine. You can afford it. But it doesn't translate into the emotional wellness of the child if that relationship or that dynamic does not exist. So that's the uninvolved parent. You don't really care. And so your child has to figure things out and get into a lot of trouble. And it goes down and down and down the lane. There's also that thing about confidence, esteem. They can exaggerate their confidence, or they can get into a lot of trouble because they've been on their own, setting their own rules. The permissive parent, the outcome for the child is a lot of confusion. Do I have to do this? Do I not have to do it? Well, I have rules, but I don't have rules. Well, can I make up my mind, or I don't need to make up my mind now? Because there's always been that flexibility. You're not really tied down to anything. So you end up also with an adult who kind of can't make those strong decisions, all right? Or is always second guessing themselves. They're like, well, I want to run the show, but can I run the show? Do I need to do I need to follow through with what you're telling me? Do I need to pay attention to anything you're telling me? And then we have the authoritative parent. So the authoritative parent is the one that says, yes, I'm the parent, but I will listen to you. You've earned your space, you've earned this, and I'm going to, listen to you, I'll open up the space. So that creates a room for dialogue. That form of parenting style is known to have positive emotional outcomes down the line if they persist that way, right? It builds confidence, it builds resilience because the child knows to speak up, to ask questions, to be confident, to be creative. They can come with great ideas and feel like they are part of something because they've been given that space. And for those of us who are people of faith, when you look at the relationship we have with Christ, we have with God, it's an authoritative kind of parenting style that God gives us. So he sets the rules, but we have something called our will. There is some wiggle room. You can say your favorite color can be blue, and that's okay. Your favorite color can be red, and that's okay. There are boundaries, but within those boundaries, we are able to come before him and ask questions and bring a petition and all of that. So think of it in that context where, you have that authoritative kind of relationship with God. You don't rewrite the Bible, but you follow it. But there is that kind of love, and you can feel it if you want to build that kind of relationship. So when you look at parenting also, you have to have that overarching view when you're looking at the parenting styles on there. what I did was I merged the principles of parenting styles, with what we call the psychosocial stages of development. There are many, many theories of development, human development, and that cuts across every age, every race, every continent. This is something that applies not just to people in the West, or just like that, it applies to people in Africa, North America, South America, I mean, the whole world. This principle of ages and stages of development goes a long way. So when you look at the parenting style and you juxtapose that with the Erickson's psychosocial stages, it goes a long way. All of us, from infancy to when we are old, we fit within a certain stage. And I would say that it's important to see these stages as more of a guideline, right? Because as you look at it, some of the ages overlap. And sometimes we have children that might be going through 2 or 3 stages at once. So this is just to give you an idea or a guideline as to what are the greatest psychosocial needs of children from the day you have them until they become adults. And I think this principle should inform what we do, regardless of whether we're in Africa or we are here. I remember speaking with a parent from an African country saying, when we were growing up, this is what we did and this is what happened to us, and why can't our children do the same? So I asked them a question. I said, you grew up in Nigeria, right? She said, yes. I said, in Nigeria, you spend Naira? She said, yes. I said, okay, great. You've been in Nigeria for a long time and then you moved to the US. Yes. Okay. The moment you moved to the US, did you realize that you could no longer spend Naira? She's like, yes, it's okay. Although Naira is relevant in Nigeria, when you move to the US, you cannot go to a store and say, well, for the 40 years of my life, I've been in Nigeria, I spent Naira, and so this is $5, I'm going to give you the equivalent in Naira. It's not going to work. But what you would have to do, since you are the one crossing over, you would have to look at the Naira you have and switch it to a dollar equivalent and then be able to purchase. So it is still money, it's still valuable, but it is no longer legal tender until you switch it from Naira to dollars, and then you can make a purchase, right? So it's still the principle of money, still the principle of exchange, but the practice has to change from Naira to dollars, right? So when you're looking at our kids and raising them, we have to be cognizant of the fact that, we are between 2 cultures and they are not. So we have to do a lot of the crossing over as long as we are staying within the principle of what parenting is and not get stuck on the practice of parenting. So the first one we get to go through is the infancy stage. When a child is 0 to 18 months, what are they really looking for? What is their core need? Because if you understand the core need of children at that stage, your focus is on addressing that need in a way that makes sense to them, right? In a way that is practical, consistent, and in a way that makes sense to them. So at that stage, their core need is trust versus mistrust. They're not speaking, but they can sense it if they can trust if they're being loved. So when they're crying and you pick them up, that represents love. When you're hugging them, you're putting them down nicely. When you're singing around them, or there's happy sound, and you're feeding them and you're changing them as they need to be changed. Those things might seem insignificant to us, that in the brain of a child and in the emotions of a child, you are telling them that you can trust me. If you're in distress and you cry, I will be there. I'll be there to figure out what you need and take care of it. So you're in that moment, in that child, you're building trust. And in their mind also, they're saying, I'm loved, I'm cared, I'm taken care of, and all of that, I can trust. Versus if you have a child who, is neglected, is abandoned, no one cares for them, then you're sending a message that, you're not being loved for. So when it comes to feeding, obviously, if you're in an African continent, the food they're going to eat might be different from what someone we eat in Europe, but it doesn't matter. The child needs to be fed. So feeding them is the most important thing. So you want to focus on food that is available. You want to focus on a system that works for you so you can maintain that trust. When you get to the next stage, which is early childhood, 2 to 3 years old, children are capable of doing a lot of things at this age range. I work in a Montessori school, and it's amazing what children can do, right? Some of them can tie the shoelaces, they can put on their jackets. They want to be independent, right? When their parents bring them to school, sometimes the parent wants to walk with the child on the way to the classroom. The child says, no, leave me here, I can go. And the parent is crying, oh, my child doesn't want me to care for them anymore. No, they are accepting their autonomy. They are at that stage where they want to be able to do things, right? They're being potty trained, they're being able to dress themselves up, and they have a need for that, right? Even if they don't clean up well, or they don't dress themselves up well, or they put their jacket on inside out, they are trying, and you want to be there to support them and to teach them to say, okay, this is the wrong way, let's try it this way. They're going to switch their shoes a lot of the time for those who are trying to put their shoes on by themselves. Left is right, right is left, but you don't discourage them. You just sit them and say, okay, let's switch it off. Today you didn't get it right. Let's switch it off. Let me teach you. Let me show you. But you're showing them. So at some point, they can do it on their own, because they need to be able to accept themselves, to believe in themselves, and to have that, to develop those critical skills, like motor skills, just being able to socialize and being able to say that, oh, I was able to accomplish this, right? You go pick them up and they have drawn this painting that you don't even know what it is. Looks like circles, looks like, there's no telling what that drawing is, but it's important to them. And they're proud of it. And they might tell you, oh, this is a castle. It looks nothing like a castle to you. But to that child, in their mind, it took a lot of work to do it, to be able to scribble something. You take it as a friend, you admire it, you give it back to them. And as they get older, they develop those skills, right? Because they need to go through that process of autonomy and overcoming their challenges and knowing that they can do something. Then they get to the preschool age. This is the age where they're a lot more conscious of what goes on around them. When they fall and people see them, they are shy, right? There's a bit of shame because they're becoming a bit more conscious. They are growing into themselves. And what they want to know is, am I a good person? Am I a bad person? So we ought to be careful with the language we use and say, this is a bad child. If you tell someone they're a bad child, then that simple statement can resonate in the person's head for a long time, even through their adulthood. What they did might be bad. So you point to the action itself. This thing you did was bad, right? This thing you did is not okay. It's not good. But not to label the child themselves as a bad child. You label the attitude or the behavior and not the child, right? So that becomes important. And if you see that they're being creative, they enjoy doing certain things, you want to place them in an environment where they have the chance to do that, right? So it's a good idea that they go to some kind of a daycare or a setting that is good, because they need to explore their social skills. They need to interact. They need to learn conflict resolution. All those things are important. And if you don't want them to stay at school all day because they have grandpa or grandma, that's fine. But they need at least a half-day program where they can engage with other children and become normal, become kids, and have that fun time, which is crucial to them. And then there's a school age. This is where the state of Maryland says you have to be in school by a certain age, because they see that once you hit 5 years of age, your brain is forming. There's a lot of things you're picking up. Your personality is beginning to show forth, and you definitely can do way, way many things. You can, between 6 to 11, you see a lot of the creativity of your children. If you're following them closely, you have a sense of what their needs are. You have a sense of their temperament, who their friends are, the things that they excel in, the things that they might need extra support in, or even the groups they want to be part of, their friends. You want to be able to be more involved or more intentional with that. When they are younger, the family is the primary influence, right? Primary influence or primary form of socialization. But as children get older, the family is no longer the primary. It shifts, and at some point, their friends or their groups or their peers take over that primary influence. But if we have done the due diligence of placing or depositing within them those important skills, even when they're external influences, they always have that reference point where they can come to. And if they have had this authoritative parenting style, they know to come to you to ask questions, because at that critical stage, they have lots of questions they want to ask. But if the parenting style has been one of, I'm uninvolved or authoritarian, which is more of a dictatorship side, then they will not come to you, because these days they can find the answers on the internet, or they can find it from someone else. So they don't have to come to you if there isn't that relationship that already exists. But if there is an existing relationship, as they get questions, they come to you, they ask you, and you're able to have that dialogue with them, and you're able to continue to work with them. Then we get to the adolescent age. That is where it becomes very critical. I say that, when there are cracks in parenting, right? When they get to the adolescent age or the teenage years, those cracks become even more visible. Think about a 100-meter race. The minute they call the race and the gun goes off and they say run, in that very second, you may not really see that difference in who is ahead, who's not ahead, because it's just that second. But as they go through the race, second upon second, you begin to see the difference. You begin to see who is ahead and who is way behind and all of that, right? So as the race progresses, the more the race progresses, the more the differences become very obvious in that race. And it's the same thing when it comes to parenting. The more our kids get older, the more the cracks widen. If we haven't built that relationship with our children, when they get to the teenage years, it becomes very crucial. One of the challenges that I sometimes have to work with teenage children of African immigrants, and they ask this question: why do my parents always yell? Why are they yelling at me? Why they tell me? Why do they want me to follow them wherever they're going? And they don't tell me that we are going somewhere and I just have to go with them. I don't want to go with them. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that. They haven't cared for me. They don't use those words to say they care for me or they love me. So why do I don't want to follow them? I have my own friends. I want to do my own thing. When I ask them questions, they don't know the answer, or I'm too afraid to ask them, right? Or all they want to do is to take me to church and that's it, right? So because at that stage, they're looking for their own identity. It doesn't mean that we abandon them, but if we understand that they also are going through their own crisis, then we can get closer to them. And I always say, when they're younger and we want to go out, you don't give them notice, we just take them and they go with us. But as they get older, they have their own, I would say they have their own nuances, they have their own identity, things that they want to do. So if you know that you have, let's say, an event that is going to take 4-6 hours. Sometimes our African events take forever. Someone's wedding, someone's engagement, someone's funeral, it takes half the day or the whole day. Now, our kids are not raised in that kind of environment where you spend a lot of hours at a single event, right? So as they are older and more aware, if you know that there's such an event coming up and you have to go with them, the best practice is to give them a heads up. You don't go to them the morning of and say, oh yeah, we are going to this auntie's place at 10 o'clock today. Get ready, let's go. That teenager is going to fight you. And then they're going to see that as you're not respecting their space. And they feel like you're just continuing to dictate to them, and they're going to fight you because at that stage in their life, they are an emerging adult. And an emerging adult needs dialogue, right? Needs understanding, needs a space, needs a place. And that is something that sometimes we struggle with because we feel that I pay your fees, I do this, so I should be able to tell you what to do, where to go. But on this side of the world, it's a bit different, right? And we always have to realize that, we are in a place where we spend dollars. And so we've come with a Naira, we've got to convert. You've got to convert to be able to have a transaction. You've got to be able to understand the world around them and know that they too are facing a lot of issues, and we need to come to the level and have that kind of relationship. If we can have that discussion with them, then they're not going to be anxious, they're not going to be sad or upset a lot of the time. They're going to feel grounded, right? They're going to feel like, okay, I have someone who listens to me even if we disagree. And that becomes very, very important. Looks like something little, but it's a huge deal to a teenager. Just the idea of knowing that they are being heard, they're being affirmed, they're being acknowledged. They can have a disagreement with you and not feel like you're going to shout at them or insult them or say, if you don't get out of my face, I'm going to slap you and reset your brain, right? We use language like that. But that's language that when you use that, it doesn't promote anything. It doesn't build, it doesn't help you establish a relationship. And they're going to want to be in their room all the time and be on their phone because they're not ready for that kind of conflict, right? They want something else. And in our time, there's so many other things vying for their attention. So if you don't have time for them, someone or something else will have time for them, and we're going to lose our children. I always cringe when parents tell me that, oh, my child is very obedient. They don't talk. When I talk to them, they don't say anything back at me. They're very, very obedient. I worry about those children because if you have a teenager who doesn't say anything, doesn't respond to you, and always goes, yes, ma, yes, ma, yes, ma, that is very telling, because when they're 18, chances are they're just counting down to be 18. And then when they leave, that's it, game over. And it's going to be a hard road. So we want to be able to engage them, right? And just acknowledge if That's something I want to acknowledge that too. And then there's a young adult, there's the thing about wanting to be in relationships, 19 to 40, this is where we're focusing on families and so many other things. And then we get to middle adulthood, we are focusing on our career, change of career or not. Those are important things to us, parenting, families. And then we get to maturity, the final stage where we are reflecting on our life and we are reflecting on, we get to a stage where yes, we wanted to acquire things, but now you're thinking about how can I pay it forward? How can I support some people, someone else? How can I support causes? What can I do to give back? And you're reflecting on your life and trying to either regretting it or being happy with it. It's just that moment of reflection and knowing that, I need to reevaluate a lot of things. So when we look at all these things, the parenting styles, ages and stages of development, and then we also look at attachment theory. Attachment theory is just something that the proponent of that, his name is called John Bowlby. And basically what he's saying is, think about when you attach to something, right? In terms of relationships, when your child or is attached to you, that produces security, I would say confidence, self-esteem, wellness, hope, assurance, resilience, right? You're pre-arming them for life challenges. They're able to deal with a lot of things because their brain is telling them, you can do it. You are capable. You are loved. You are cared for. If you have challenges, I'm here to support you. I'm here for you. I'm going to guide you. I'm going to redirect you. All those positive vibes that they need as the brain develops. And so attachment theory tells you that the more attached, or the more securely attached a child is to a parent or a caregiver or an adult, the healthier their outcomes are and the more detached they are. Think about a tree. If a tree is rooted, you never see someone say, I want to take a bucket of water and go to the forest and water trees. No, because the trees are well grounded. They don't need you to water them. They're well grounded. Versus if you have a seedling in a nursery, you want to water it because it's young. You want to give it everything it needs until its roots are grounded, and then you don't have to monitor them or try to water them. So when we think about parenting, we think about it in the broader perspective of what can I do? How do I parent this child in such a way that, I'm going to promote their wellness outcomes and I'm going to put out the child who is healthy and well. I think we need to know that we as parents or as adults, we are responsible for our children, but we don't own them. And we have to have the mindset of we are raising them so they grow, but once they are grown, they have to go. We don't raise our children and keep them. They don't belong to us. We don't even own our lives, right? We are responsible for them, but we don't own them. And we have to look beyond just, is my kid, they have my DNA. They belong to the world. We want to be able to give them back to the world in the best condition possible and to be able to say we did our part with a gift or with a treasure we're given, and we were able to support them all along the way. So these things become very crucial when we are talking about our children. So it helps for us to bear that in mind and not say, oh, we are raised differently and all of that. And sometimes in parenting our children also, we learn a lot about ourselves too. We also see our weaknesses. Are we patient enough? And when we are yelling at them, why are we yelling? Is it because we were yelled at? Is it okay to continue that? Can we break the cycle? Can we do it differently? Can we parent in such a way that we are able to support our children in this environment that comes with a lot of stresses and lots of challenges? So I know my time is fast spent, so I'm going to end it here. But I thought that, we guide our children. When we are not speaking, that's when they're watching us. Children learn by observation, and I say they listen with their eyes, right? We adults will listen with our ears and want to hear what people are saying, but children are listening with their eyes in that they're watching you. Are we telling them not to lie? And are we lying? Are we telling them to be patient and we are impatient? That's what they're watching. That's what they're listening to. Your actions is what they're listening to, not just the words that you're saying. So we ought to be mindful of these things and support our children so that they can have those outcomes. They can have. There's a difference between children that are raised here versus children that are raised back home. Children that are raised here will ask you questions, and for us we think it's rude, but I welcome it when young children ask me questions. I'm like, okay, they're processing. They're free to ask. But if I find myself in an African setting, oh, no question, because someone might have a question, but they're too afraid to raise their hand because they think if I raise my hand to ask a question, that'll be viewed as I'm challenging the status quo. But no, we want children that are critical thinkers, children that are confident but not arrogant, right? But we have to be able to work with them and encourage them or lead them along that path so that they are whole beings, right? They're well-rounded human beings, and they can be they can produce something good into this ever challenging and complicated times that we find ourselves in. So I think I'm going to wrap up here. Time is well spent, and I'm going to say that's it for tonight. Thank you for your time.
Wow. Thank you so much. I learned a lot there. What parents do in moderation, children would do in excess. So we have to watch it. I was hoping you would go to those older ages. You know, you had I think the 65 up, and for 65 you had, you know, I was hoping that you would touch on some, the 40 to 65 and then 65 to death. What have we done? Did we live well? Have we lived too much?
I thought we were running out of time. So I was like, okay, let me, we're talking about kids here, childhood, so let me just wrap it up. But yeah, so middle adulthood, this is the midlife, basically. Midlife, the crisis is, what we call the midlife crisis, because here you are the midpoint. Do I continue? Am I going the right path? So I'm going the right path. Do I continue the right path? Or if I find that it's the wrong path, do I turn back? What effort does it make for me to, because you're 50-50, you're like, maybe I should just go down this path. I'm already halfway. It's easier to go down that path, or to say, I think it's time to reinvent myself. It might be a challenge to go all the way back and start on another road, but it will be worth it because I feel that I want to, I understand myself better, and I feel like, this career path I'm going down, it's not what I really wanted to do. And for some of us, the career paths we chose are because we made a grades, or because our parents wanted us to go down that path. And so we didn't have much of a choice, but we are on that path and we are doing well, but you're not fulfilled. There's a difference between making money and being fulfilled. Those two things are very, very different. And the older you become, the more you have the need to be fulfilled in what you're doing. Fulfillment also has a direct correlation to your overall wellness, right? So you find people who are so wealthy and seem to be doing okay, but at night when they go to bed, they feel emptiness, within them. So when you get to middle age, that's where the crisis is. Reassetting yourself, re-identify, reevaluating your life. Am I stuck here? Do I need to continue going to school? Do I need to upgrade myself? Should I still learn? I know that for me, when I was back home, when people get to a certain stage, you don't necessarily see them going back to school or studying, because like, I'm done, and this is my path, this is my one career, and that is it. So that's the right part, right? But here you realize that people change, because as they evolve and discover themselves, they might say, you know what, I can do this and that and that. And that's where you begin to make all those decisions. And then there's family involved. A lot of the time around this midlife crisis, you might be, there's a high chance that you have a family of your own, whether single or married or all those things. So also sometimes you can get lost in the process of being a parent. So you get to redefine and say, what do I want to do? What do I want for my life? How do I balance work and parenthood? Am I producing something to this world? Have I wasted my time, or am I doing a lot to contribute to the world? So there's a lot of, I would say, analysis and reflection and reorganizing or resetting. If you're very vigilant on just taking stock of your life. So that gives you the chance to take stock and to change the wheel if you need to, right? So you might assess yourself and say, yes, I'm a doctor. Absolutely. This is what I wanted to do. So let me be the best doctor possible. Let me go down that path. Or you might say, I'm a doctor, but no, my goodness, I want to be a musician. Or I want to be a social worker. I want to do something else. I need to go back to school for that. So this is the age for that thing. Are you stagnant? Are you making progress? Do you want to push yourself forward? Do you have the energy? Do you believe that you still have the time? You still have something that you can accomplish, and you go through that. And some people might experience divorce or death or loss of a loved one. All these things happen in the middle age stage as well. So a lot of things to consider around that age. And then of course, maturity to death. This is reflecting on your life. What have you done? You might have grandkids. For quite a number of people, or you might have kids that, are married, and you're thinking, at the end of it all, it's almost like you are sitting on top of a hill and looking down, is that something I should have shifted? Do I still have time to correct things? And sometimes you have time to correct, and sometimes maybe not. But you are at that stage, what's the end stage of your life where you're thinking, you're reflecting, you're thinking, it could be a happy moment for you if you've, gone down, you've made certain good decisions, or it could be a tough moment if you find yourself alone and maybe due to certain actions of yours, your family is not in touch with you and all of that. So all these things are every stage of life has its own psychosocial issues and crises and things that we need to work on. If we work on that and we resolve it, we just become stronger. But if we don't resolve it, then it leads from one crisis to another, to another, to another, to another. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate you. So if you put the slides down, then I can see what I'll put the gallery. Madam VP, Madam CEO, Madam VP. I saw you raise your hand. Yes, ma'am. Kindly unmute.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Oh my gosh, that was deep.
Dr. L, you did a surgical work on this subject matter. You dissected it. Very well done.
Thank you.
So I mean, we did all we could with what we knew, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now that we're learning more, we could do better. So I'm coming from the perspective of a grandmother.
Yes.
There are some things that when my grandkids are with me, they do, and my daughter would be furious. Say, "What? You let them do that? You never let me do that." I'm like, wait a minute. This is a different relationship. And this is constantly coming. So how do we co-parent as a grandparent? How do we, because grandparent tends to be softer, more sensitive to the grandkids, like you say, oh, my granddaughter wants to be picked up all the time. If it's possible, she doesn't want to walk by herself, but we have to let her walk. And the mother will say, put her down, she can walk, put her down. So where do we draw the line? That's number one question. Number two is about diet. The cereal that, I see their mother letting them eat, I am not in support of that, because I've learned a lot of things right now on Medical Monday. And I know that we have to stomp out sugar from this age. It's an acquired taste. If they don't acquire the taste for it, they're not going to crave it. So I need help in those two areas.
So yeah, thank you for those questions. Those two questions are very, very common questions. Two of the commonest questions we get asked, and it's not just African parents, but you have, parents from here. And grandparents are always, they say grandparents are guilty because they feel like, maybe they were too harsh with their own children and now they were trying to make it up with, the grandkids, or they've had time to put things into perspective and to realize, okay, I need to tone down, I'm older now, and stuff like that. So there's always always those questions. But the important thing is to have that dialogue with your child, with your daughter, right? Or your sons, or whoever the case may be. Because what works best for children is having consistency, wherever they are, right? If they do one thing at one place and something else in another place, that doesn't really help them because there's a lot of inconsistency. And think about it as adults, right? You go to work every day, you don't know when you're going to start work and when you're going to leave work. You don't like that feeling, right? We don't really like that feeling. I want to know that when I go to work, these are my hours. If I choose to stay late, fine. But at least I need to know that I have a routine and I know what I'm doing each day I go into work. So same for children, right? They might not be able to verbalize that, but they need to have that consistency. So if you see that sugar and stuff like that is not good for them, which is not healthy for them, and your daughter doesn't understand yet, it takes education, right? The same way that you found out down the line that this may not be the best choice, they also need to have a chance to be educated. I would send them articles. I would say send them articles or bring them on programs or show them things so they can also learn, sort of things that they've learned along the way, and they can see things from your perspective. If we try to speak with them while you have the children, that may not be the best moment. But if you, one-on-one and just begin to have that open dialogue, and maybe you can reach a compromise, have that open dialogue to say, such and such and such when it comes to discipline. If it's not consistent, it doesn't really work. And the kids end up being confused. I would say that becomes very important when you're trying to work with kids or work with your grandkids. It's important that we educate, our children too, because they are also working with what they think is best. And for children, depending on where they are, I mean, I have children who come to school in school settings, and the parents will say, my child would never sit down, my child would never put on their jacket, my child would never do this, they don't do it at home. But the child comes to school, and guess what? They do it, right? Because we have expectations for them. We don't give them the choice to say, well, you don't want to do it, so then you don't have to do it. No, they are capable of doing it, right? If they're not capable, it's a different thing. They are capable, and therefore we expect them to do it. And if they're struggling, we are there to support them to do it, because we want them to be able to function independently, because they have a need for that. There's a principle behind that. So I would say a lot of educating your child, because there isn't any other way around it. If you don't do that, then whatever you do at home, once they go to the other place, they're going to do something else, and it will only negate it. So it's important to have that dialogue, that open dialogue with your child, with your daughter.
So how about that relationship with the grandchildren themselves? I mean, it's not like grandparents want to be permissive, but it's not the same relationship. How do you handle that? Is that okay? Because when you started with the definition of parenting, you defined parents as somebody who is taking care of a child or children, somebody. So it could be a grandparent, it could be anybody, but they are the ones taking care of somebody. So how do one handle that? Because you see your grandchildren differently from the way you raised you.
Yes, and as you should, because you're a grandparent, right? As you should, but not to the point where it's a total deviation from what they get at home. So let's say, let me flip it around. Let's say, and they're different households. So let's say maybe your child stays with his grandparent twice a week, or 2 days in a week, spends time with the grandparent. Let me just say, and that might be different from every household, but just to give it some perspective. So let's say 2 out of 7 days, grandma or grandpa has the children. You can make it in such a way that you say, this is grandma's space. When you come to grandma, we have fun, we do this, we go here, we do that. But you also have certain limits, right? So if maybe they don't eat sugar at home, you don't want to be the grandma that would give them the sugar, because then you're negating everything else they've done in the 5 days. But if they're with you, they want to have fun stuff, they want to play. It's a weekend, so maybe weekday they don't watch too much TV, or the special programs they watch. You can say, yeah, you can watch this, but then we can go out and I can buy something for you. So it's about everyone playing a certain role, a specific role, without compromising the overarching principles of that home, right? So you can still do that, because it's a different kind of relationship, and that's okay, but not to, contradict what the family is trying to do. So let's say if they use polite words, yes, thank you, can I please have this? Can I please, and you're aware of that. Then when they come to you, grandma, you also want them to be able to ask things, saying, can I please? You don't say, well, you don't have to say please when you come to this house. You're still teaching them manners, but they're having a different kind of fun without losing the essence or that important principle that you're trying to teach them as a group. And it's important. I had a kid who had different people involved in her life, stepmom, mom, grandpa, and all different special relationships, right? Grandpa, she had special Tuesdays with grandpa. So she knew that Tuesday, grandpa will pick me up and take me here. We're going to eat something, we're going to have fun and all of that. So they had fun, but they still stayed within, I would say, the core principles of that family, whatever it was that they defined. So it's possible to have fun without jeopardizing all, the overarching thing that you're trying to teach your child. So I think sometimes we're guilty of, I just want to have fun and have fun. Just want to have fun and have fun. And then we forget that there's still work to be done, right? Because whatever we do with them, they're picking up on that. And sometimes they can play grandma against mom or dad or something, because they know kids are smart. They know how to get around these things. So we just want to make sure we're on the same page, even if we're having fun with them.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Thank you. So I have here Mr. Adeola. Kindly unmute and ask your question. And please, you can post your questions in the chat box, or better still, raise your hand and ask. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, ma'am, Dr. O, the moderator. We have such a passionate teacher.
Dr. Popola.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Popola, you put
You're
Adiola
welcome,
on
ma'am.
there.
Yes.
Welcome.
You're welcome. You're welcome. It's just my privilege to listen to such an erudite lady, and sincerely speaking. But I have some issue. The grammar issue you are talking about, we grew up from a background that we always believe that grammars are less impatient. They are more tolerant because they've been there, just like the first speaker, a great madam said. We've seen it all. So the anxiety a mom will have about our daughter or our son showing some particular traits, grandma can always mellow it down because she's already experienced, she's seen quite a bit of it, even with that same mom when she was a child, and possibly with other siblings or other relatives. I do know that in this community where we are here, everybody has to defer to the lady of the house, that is the mom, the wife. Okay? But then we normally see that it really does causes crisis, a big deal. And I don't know how it's more with grandmom and mom than grandpa and the other children. But certainly there has to be room because somebody told me, I read it too a little bit, that grandma go to menopause so that it can be available to take care of grandchildren. Is that part of the biological thing that goes into the? No, it's true. I mean, that was what I was told. Okay, and that's the biological thing that we cannot say has been wrong, because back in the days, people used to take their children to the village so that they can learn culture, they can learn attitude, and they say such children grow up to be kind. Okay, I want to believe this is cultural, just like you did mention earlier on. But at least when we can tie the biology to it, there might be something in it that we may have to look at. And I don't know particularly how you want to explain that. But my primary question also goes in the same way. All the good things you might have done, I'm looking at the Erickson 8 stages you gave us, and I'm looking at it and I said, but when people get to teenage years and the peer pressure, how much of it may alter all those things you have inculcated in the child at the beginning? Is there a way you can go around that? In which case, before the child turns to adulthood. And this also has to do with the biology. So how much of biology goes into this psychology for us to actually be able to move our social system better? And the final one is, sorry, I'm just using the opportunity, Dr. O will kick me out now. The final one is, we have noticed that the more successful a woman is in America here, and she's has a skin tone like me, the more likely she would divorce her husband. Is that part of what has been coming, or just pick up here? Or the impact of the environment and our level of education? Thank you.
I can respond to all. Is that okay? Do you want me to respond, or do you want me to?
Yes, please. Oh, please.
Okay.
Yes.
So hopefully I remember your question. So the thing about menopause. So to start off, there are grandparents who have not yet hit menopause, right? At least on this side of the world. So that theory in itself doesn't hold too much. So maybe in the past that was the case, but now we see that there are grandparents who haven't yet hit menopause, and they have to have their kids. And then when we talk about, how much of the teenagers, and I think, sorry, back to that, I think last week or so, I don't remember, we talked about time. What time gives you the opportunity to reflect on a lot of things and to make wiser decisions, right? So the idea or the ideal is that the older you become, the wiser you're supposed to become. That is, if you learn from your mistakes, You make sure that your experiences are not wasted experiences. So you take something from it and you build upon that. They become building blocks for you. And by the time you get to your 40s or 50s, technically you should be wiser than someone who is just beginning life because you've been through it, right? You've come out of the tunnel. So you can say, when you get to this side of the tunnel, make a left. When you get here, make a right, or wiggle your way, or wait 5 minutes before you leap, or that, because you've been through it. And so when you're looking back, you want to be able to pull someone and not to let them go through the same challenges that you did. I know that for us immigrants, sometimes you want our people to go through the same challenges and say, when I came, I did this, so you also must go through it. But no, you're supposed to, the next person comes and builds upon something, and the next, and the next, and the next, right? And then you get something, you get a real legacy. That's the meaning of a legacy, right? So in that regard, not necessarily when your grandma, you're supposed to be wiser. So that knowledge is what you take. That knowledge is what takes away the anxiety, or should take away the anxiety, because you've seen it. So if a new parent is wondering about, oh, my child, didn't eat this afternoon, I'm so worried that something is wrong with them. You can say, well, not necessarily. If they don't eat at the end of the day, then maybe start worrying. But if they don't eat in the afternoon, don't worry about it. Evening time, this and this, and you're in a place where you can give counsel because you've seen it multiple times. So that's the advantage you have. The age, not necessarily the menopause. There is also something called, when you talk about biology, there is always this discussion about nature versus nurture, right? There's always this debate, right? How much of what we do is genetic and how much of it is environmental? And there's all this back and forth. Nature is important. That is the things, the DNA, your skin color, your hair, those things that you come into this world with. That is nature. But nurture, which is your environment, is equally powerful. In a lot of cases, nurture can overcome nature, right? So I can be born with a certain skin type. I can darken it, or I can make it lighter, depending on the environment I'm in and the accessibility to creams and surgeries and all of that. I can switch, right? Or I can be born with a certain hair type, and I might decide I want to chemically process my hair. So my hair will look different. That is what nature does for you, right? So you might have certain traits, but if you're in an environment that is able to support you positively, you can overcome some of those, negative tendencies. Look at children in this country that might have some kind of learning disability. They give them IEP, they give them specialists, they do this and that, and they're able to overcome. So that's a case of nurture, your environment, overcoming or mitigating some of the impacts of nature. You can also have, on the flip side, someone that might have good traits, but they find themselves in an environment where everything around them is negative. So in spite of whatever good traits or tendencies they might have, that environment would also alter them. So you want to focus more on, okay, this is where I am. When you realize your child's challenges early or their strengths early, you want to be able to support them. That's where nurture comes in. The environment comes in to say, this person is a great singer or a great dancer, or, has an ability to analyze numbers, or has this, that, and that. Let me sign them up for this program. Let me make this available to them. Let me support them. That. So you're harnessing that. Or if you find that your child has certain issues, you're saying, okay, let me take you to this place or that, and let me try to support you. So nature can give you things, but nurture can do a lot of things around that. When it comes to the teenage years, there are children born in this country, raised in this country. Their parents may not even believe in God or nothing, but those teenage children do not get into trouble. Why? Because the parents have been consistent. They have intentionally surrounded them with systems consistently. The children don't even realize they're being surrounded by systems. It's not imposed, because they know if you impose it, they're going to walk away from it. But they're very deliberate. Before they have the kid, they have already determined what they're going to do. For us, we have the kids because we are that age, we want to have kids. And then after we have them, we're trying to now begin to plan, oh, what do I do? And sometimes we have them because we have the money, but emotionally, we are not available, or you just can't handle it. And having kids in this country, it's not the same as Africa. It's a lot of work. So you might be able to have the money to pay for 10 children, but only have the emotional availability for 1 or 2. In this time, our kids need us to be emotionally available, because it's a huge thing for them. And so if we are not really intentional about when we want to have kids, how many we want to have, and the plan we have for them. We're like working because we need to earn the money to take home, or to build a house back home, or to do this, or to support people. All of those things are important. But if you're looking at your child, especially as they get older, they might not need your physical presence so much, but they need your emotional availability more than ever. So they need you to be emotionally closer. Although physically you might take a step back, but emotionally you got to be there every step of the way, every step. Because when we don't do that, and when we don't give them a chance to ask questions, I think I said earlier, you might think that your child is listening to you. They've gone to church, they come back, yes, oh yeah, fine, oh yeah, fine. But until you begin talking to them or putting scenarios before them, checking in on them, in a very organic way, you never know the depth of what you've told them. They don't really understand it. Are they following? Because if they don't follow, they're going to get into trouble with you. So they're going to follow and they're going to be quiet. And then you're going to see the cracks as they widen. Not every teenager gets into trouble, right? So there is a reason. There's a method behind that. It's very intentional. It's a very critical moment for them. And you really want to be able to have those discussions and pre-arm them. You know that they might be going through certain emotional challenges. Do we talk to our daughters about menopause? Do we talk to our sons about wet dreams? So can we have those conversations at the right time so that they can come to us? Are we going to be the first to tell them, or you're thinking, I can't even have that kind of conversation with my child? Then there's a problem. It must come from you first, right? Because whoever it comes from first is whoever they're more likely to listen to, because they heard it from you first. So we've got to be ahead of the game, pre-arming them consistently, and having that authoritative parenting style where there is that relationship. That's the only leverage you have with them. Relationship, not your money, relationship. Sincere relationship. That's your only leverage, nothing else. If we don't have that, then it becomes very, very difficult. And they're going to walk away. A lot of them have walked away. They'll get to college and that's it. They're like, okay, I'm done. I'm going to live my life, and everything was just do as I say. And this time they're going to, do a lot of that. But there are teenagers who don't get into trouble because, and for those teenagers, a lot of work went into that. It wasn't just happenstance. It was a lot of intentionality, a lot of sacrifice. And if we're willing to make that sacrifice, then yes, we'll have better outcomes.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. There was a question about is it somebody is color?
Okay, yes.
Female?
Female, yes.
Go ahead, yeah.
Yeah.
What's the question again? A female.
I remember it.
Why do they likely divorce?
I remember, and I'm laughing because that's something that also we hear
I've not been researched.
Yeah, I hear a lot of, and I'm smiling because I've also been privy to a lot of situations where the husband was ready to marry, but said, the guy, was ready to marry, but said, I want a wife who is submissive. I don't want someone who is already here. I want a wife who is very submissive. So I'm going to go to, Africa, wherever, and go and marry them and bring them, because I want someone who's submissive, who's not already messed up in the system. So they go get them, bring them. Guess what? After a few years, when the person gets into the system and they get to understand the system, then they become, a different kind of person, right? Not just the ones you were scared of, they become even 10 times worse, because now I'm here, I'm in the system, I know how these things work. I don't have to listen to you. I can be independent, and I can do all of that, right? And then we begin to have this crisis. But unfortunately for us, when we're raising our children, we raise them in certain, I would say, stereotypical roles, right? To say, the woman has to do this and the man has to do that. And so when we come here, we expect it to be that way. But it doesn't work that way. And so if you're raised in such a way, if what you saw at your home was your dad doing certain things and your mom only doing certain things, and you expect that to continue in your home, it's going to be a bit of a challenge, because if your wife is working just like you, and you are, both of you going to work, you come back, you're raising kids, but you still want the woman to do everything. I hope I'm not upsetting people. We're having a very frank, realistic, modern day conversation. It becomes very challenging for the woman, and there were times where our parents stayed in those relationships because maybe back home they didn't have anywhere else to go. But here, if a woman is working and can stand on her own feet, now she needs more than your money to stay. She needs a deeper reason to stay. Because if it's money, she's working too. If it's a house, she can afford. If it's raising a kid, she can pay for the kid. So there has to be a stronger reason beyond just the money you can bring to the table. So it's changed a lot. It's changed a lot. And I think that sadly sometimes for our male counterparts, they may not have realized that or understood that the dynamic behind. People would say, I don't need that stress. I don't want to die. If it's not working, I can take care of myself. So that is so some of that, a lot of that, a lot of that is that, right? And of course, there are always people who maybe just want to take advantage of you and see a good guy, and therefore they're going to mess up or, have your own plans and all. There are always people like that in everything. But for the most part, this is where we find ourselves as Africans in a new country, in a new system. So I think we need to train ourselves, our daughters and our sons. It's okay to be in the kitchen. I never saw my dad boil water in the kitchen for all my life, never. But will that system work here? No, it wouldn't, because it's very different. And we want our kids to be well. Therefore, we want to prepare them, not just for when they get married, prepare them for life, because you don't know where your child is going to end up. So whether it's a son or a daughter, prepare them. There's nothing wrong with them doing housework. It's okay. It's not a sin. It's just a cultural thing, and it can change. It has to change. The principle must be that everyone is a contributor to this home. So for this week, maybe you are doing this chore. Next week, flip it around. I say that to my friends who have young kids. Flip it around. Let the guy cook at home and the girl does something else. And next week, you flip it. So both of them can live on their own independently, and they don't have to rely. Think about it. Why would someone's daughter, be responsible for the rest of their life for the food you eat? This is something you have to do every day, and we are both working in this country. So there's that mindset that has to change, right? Not because you want to be rude, but there has to be that safe space where we would say, you know what, this week I will do it. Next week is your turn, and just make it fun so that children see that too, and they can pick up on that, and they are well armed for their future. They're not waiting for someone to come and show them off or anything like that. And then there can be that dialogue where I don't feel like, being with you is a burden. I can see that you coming to my life adds value, and I also add value to your life. It's not about what I can take from you, but what we both can give to each other. If we can have that honest dialogue without feeling like, this is anti-African, this is worse thing. A lot of people have died prematurely. A lot of us are unwell because we've taken on too much, more than we're supposed to. But if it's supposed to be a good unit, a family unit, everyone plays a role, right? When you go to the restaurant, some of the best chefs are men, right? We will eat their food, pay a heavy price, compliment them, compliments of the chef. But that was a fellow man cooking, which you enjoy, and we complimented them. So there's nothing wrong. See what I'm saying? It's more of a cultural thing. But in principle, what do you want for your home? Do you want peace? Do you want it to be one? What are you looking for when you're deciding to be with someone? Are you looking at it from the African mindset? Like, I want someone who will cook for me. Is that your criteria, right? The world has moved like 200 miles ahead. There should be more to that criteria. Something more, I want someone who brings a lot more to the table. All those things, believe it or not, impact your wellness, because your kids can pick up on the temperature, emotional temperature of the home. If there is peace, they'll pick up on it. If there's confusion, they'll pick up on it. If there's fighting every time, they pick up on that, and that impacts them too. So we want to be very, very intentional about what we do. It's not just, there has to be, even in our countries, that is changing. There's a shift, and there has to be a shift because we're in a different dispensation, and it's okay to have that shift, right? You don't lose yourself. If anything, you gain yourself back because you're an active contributor And so it's important who you choose, because that is a partner. You see, like a partnership, partnership. You don't want to be in a partnership with somebody who has nothing to lose, right? That's a I would say a dangerous kind of partnership where the next other person has nothing to lose. You want to be in a partnership with someone who's equally invested in what's going on, and it has to be fair, right? Especially if you're people of faith, it just has to be fair, and you have to think about all of that, and it's a lot to take in, but there are many layers to this, and we want to be able to, not just know for ourselves, but pass it on to our children. Think about your children. You want a better. Some of us who say, if I could do this all over again, I don't know if it'll be you, but you've learned a lesson, and guide your children so they can make better decisions and be better than us. That should be the goal.
That's a deep one. It's a subject that we have to address like individually and bring Dari, the matchmaker, because that's, I think we ought to start with the definition of submission and the definition of love. That one is deep. Dr. Kokwola, that was deep. Eh?
Yeah, I would just say, sincerely speaking, I would just say, because this is what we do face, if you believe that parenting leads us to the kind of adults
we can't see your face. We can't see your face.
My face? Oh,
yeah.
I'm sorry. What's wrong with
there
that face?
That's good. That's better. Yeah.
Sorry. I'm using this phone. Yeah, if think about the parenting, making us become what we do become. I mean, it looks like parenting from what Dr. V have told us now is a lifelong thing. I mean, you just have to continue to parent a child, even if she has become adult and has a child. You have to still dialogue that. Look, I prefer this way to you, but my experience now tells me that the way you are taking care of your son needs to be modified. It looks like parenting really doesn't ever stop, and that's our African culture. I tied it to those biology because those biological changes actually create crisis. And I do not necessarily mean that the woman has to be submissive and other things. But even if you are saying that even the one in the Western world there, unquote, Western world, I'm putting it now, okay? It is not working for them either anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and there are people here who are just as educated as people back home, who have a better family life.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not about the education. And I just think that sometimes the environment can be so strong
mm-hmm.
that it might actually completely negate, except consciously we adopt this. Maybe we're going to come out with our own theory. Erickson has written his own, that the parenting never actually stops.
It doesn't.
Because that should be a very important thing. But I learned quite a bit, please. Thank you so very much.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Thank you. So Dr. Ajagbe had his hand raised, but he's in Nigeria, and I think network has been crazy. I think it dropped off. So Sister Lola, kindly unmute and ask your question. Thank you. Sister Lola, kindly unmute.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now. Yes.
Yes, I say, Dr. Suma, thank you so much for the presentation. I'm not sure if I missed anything concerning young adults. Do you have any summary or guideline how parents should relate to young adults? Peradventure, all those false topics that you mentioned, if one miss one or you raise them in one of those topics that you raised earlier, how do you make corrections, or how do you now try to rectify?
So authoritarian, that's somebody who, it's my way or no way parenting. Permissive.
Or any of the other three. Yeah, if you have done any of the other three.
Yeah, who just allow them to do anything, and then the uninvolved parents. So how do you rectify it if you are one of those categories? Okay, Dr. Luguterah, the floor is yours.
For young adult now, not for teenagers.
For
Okay.
adults. So what age are you looking at? I just want to...
Probably 21 to 30 or 29, somewhere thereabout.
Okay.
Excellent
So
question.
The redo
Excellent question.
recipe.
okay.
That's
So
a
you're
redo
saying that...
recipe. I'm sorry.
I can't,
So
somebody.
That's the redo recipe.
Oh, okay, redo recipe, yes. So yeah, so and of course, when you learn this stage, I think I started off by saying that someone might be going through multiple stages at a time. So that stage is just I would say a guideline for you to recognize that there are the certain developmental things, or it's like a building block. But of course, if you maybe you didn't know, or you're not as intentional as you ought to be, and then you find yourself, your kids are older, there's always the opportunity to try to rectify things, right? But then of course, when your kid is much older and you're trying to have a relationship with them, it's harder. Think about the way that we build houses back home, when you have a cement and you freshly put it on the floor. If you need to scrape it off, it's easier to take it off, right? You just go and take a shovel and can take it off. But when it dries and you actually have to now, take it off, you need like a whole, what do we call it, a pickaxe or whatever. You need a lot more energy to be able to break it apart and try to redo it. So that's what happens when our kids are old and we're trying to go back. But the first stage is recognizing as a parent that this will take a lot of time. It's not going to be an overnight fix, because they are adults, they have their lives, they have things they're doing. They may or may not listen to you. One of the things that I know that works is when there is that acknowledgement, that sincere acknowledgement, right? When you acknowledge as a parent, if I understood your question well, that you missed a block, you acknowledge as a parent that you missed something, and you have this honest conversation. They are adults. They also might have already begun to make mistakes in life, so they will understand what a mistake is, right? And we see that on TV shows all the time when we're trying to reconcile families or parents and kids and all of that. So there's always the opportunity, but it begins with an acknowledgement first. And this time, the kid who is an adult gets to set the pace, right? So you cannot just barge into your life and say, okay, I missed it, so I want to correct this right away. You meet them where they are. Are they willing to talk to you? It might be a phone call. It might be once a month. It might be a text. But you take that, and every chance you get, you want to be able to, be on the listening side or the receiving side, hear what they have to say, how they felt, and ask from them, where do we begin from here? It might be a very simple task to say, okay, I need you to come with me to help me with this agenda, to help me with this task. Or if I have a kid, help me with this, or college or work, just life situations. It's just finding those little spaces they give you, and then you accept yourself gradually, and you become the authoritative parent, the one that listens, the one that sits back. So you don't go in owning the show, because you don't own the show. You go in just someone watching the show and giving input as you're invited or as you're welcome to give input. Of course, if you're a praying person, you pray behind the scenes, you always do that spiritual warfare. But on a physical front, there has to be that you cannot relent. Whether it's a birthday card, you're aware of the birthday, things that are important to them. You want to begin to build a relationship. So it's more about looking to build a relationship first versus trying to tell them how they should live their life or what they should do, because they're going to say, we don't have that relationship. And so relationship is based on, when you have a relationship with someone, it gives you a lot of leverage to be able to, for them to want to even listen to you in the first place, right? If I don't have a relationship with you, I don't have to listen to you. So you might have 1,000 great ideas. I'm not listening. But if we have that trust, we begin to build it by just talking and just giving you that space to vent, then we can begin to work on something. I recall a case where, a child whose mom had walked away from the marriage, and she walked away, and the child experienced difficulties. And now, years back, the mom says, okay, I left the marriage because I wanted a better life for you, and you guys were struggling. So I left so I could work hard and send money home and all of that. And you don't appreciate it. And, mom was not willing to hear what this adult's daughter was saying. So I said to this parent, you made a decision, which you made your decision based on that time, but the decision you made, you cannot say that your child should not feel what they're feeling. And if you want to have any meaningful relationship, you have to acknowledge the challenges your child experiences and why they're having a hard time bonding with you. If you don't see it from their viewpoint and you're always stuck on, oh, I left because I wanted a better life, that's a decision you made for your child. But it doesn't mean that by acknowledging your child's feelings, you are diminishing what you did. You ought to be able to balance both, to realize that your child struggled based on a decision you made. You have to own it. Hear their feelings, hear them out. And based on that, if you're able to have this honest discussion and acknowledgement, you can build from there. So rather than be quick to do things, be quick to have that relationship and do whatever it takes to establish it. Whatever is important to that person at that time is what you're going to do. And gradually you build into a relationship, and then you have something more consistent. So I would say, don't be in a hurry to say, I want you to do things. Oh, I did wrong. So now let's start afresh. Let's go hanging out. It doesn't work that way.
Very, very helpful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Oh my gosh, it's great to know that at least things can be turned around. Things can change. So Auntie Susan said, thank you so much, Dr. L, for the clear analysis on parenting. Have you been able to recognize some good points in the African upbringing? If yes, she's appealing that we incorporate some of those into the American type of upbringing.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and that's a very good question. And I started off by saying we want to focus on the principle of parenting, on the principle rather than the practice, because when you focus heavily on the practice, you can very quickly become obsolete, right? But if you focus on the principle never changes. The practice changes, and it has to change, right? So think about the clothes we wear. We still have to wear clothes, but something that maybe was fashionable 20 years ago, or even 5 years ago, may not necessarily be fashionable right now. But you're not going to say, well, I'm going to wear whatever I want to wear, and it doesn't matter. I'm going to dress however, it's summertime, I'm going to wear my winter jacket because I just feel like, it's winter time, I'm going to wear a sleeveless tank because that's what I feel like. You adjust, right? You find the appropriate clothing based on the weather you're in. It's still clothing. So your practice, which is the specific clothes you choose, change based on the weather. Because you want to find something appropriate, but you're still clothing yourself throughout the seasons, right? So you think about it from that perspective and not be stuck with it. I love the idea. I always say that I am so proud, I'm so thankful that I have this strong African background, parenting background versus, American or European parenting background. Why? Because if we actually do have a chance to do parenting right, we have I would say, better philosophy, but the implementation of it is where we miss it, right? I love the idea that we have this thing about family, where people are involved in the parenting of raising up of a child. It's not just one person, and there's all of that. So that goes a long way. It's a good thing to have. It's an important thing to have, because really, it takes a village to raise a child, however you look at it. And the people here are missing out on that village. And so we have a lot of crisis, right? Because that village is missing and people have to struggle to find their own village. And it could be a wrong kind of village. But that notion of, people being concerned, not just your parents, but people lending a helping hand when you have a child, there's this person here, all of those things are really, really important. Respect for the elderly. Oh, what an awesome thing to teach our children. So awesome, right? And so that's something that you want to leverage. You want to tell people about just the idea of thinking beyond yourself and showing respect because this person has already gone down the road that you would even dream to go down. Those kind of valuable lessons, those are important that we have to teach them. Eating right, walking around, just taking walks. That we walked around a lot back home, and we didn't realize that all of that was actually helping us build resilience, right? We didn't realize that the kind of food that we eat, very healthy, lean food, bitter leaf, all those things that we find, they're actually medicine for your body. We didn't know that, right? But now we're here and just eating anyhow. But those things that we have, we can teach our children that without yelling at them. We can. And we can teach them that without saying, what I'm saying is the only thing, I won't listen to you. I think what we're missing, if we're able to create this parenting style, this authoritative parenting style where our children are not afraid to come and talk to us. I know that whenever my dad was coming home, as soon as he opened the gate and we could hear him drive, everyone was just, you got to hide. You got to disappear. They cannot come and find you sitting down comfortably. It just doesn't happen. And you cannot just show up and say, Dad, I want to have a conversation with you. Let's hang out. That doesn't exist, right? That wasn't part of the parenting style. But here, they need that. So we can still bring in those African concepts, which are very, very crucial, but we can do it in such a way that, they still have the opportunity to come to us and just sit with us and just ask questions, and we answer them, even if we disagree with them. So it is possible. I think it's even necessary to merge those two things, because truly, we could use a lot of that in our time. So there's a lot of positive things when it comes to African parenting, but we have to be able to take out that dictator style and that yelling and all, I said it, so you have to do it. It becomes very, then, it's like you have clean water, right? And you put it in a dirty cup. You mess everything up. Whereas all you had to do was rinse the cup, put in a clean water. You can have both the cup and you can have both the water stays clean. You don't lose anything that way. So, we just want to be able to clean up, brush up a few things. But we do have very, very strong parenting ideas and all of that. And I think if we blend the two, our children can and should do a whole lot better.
Fantastic. Auntie Susan, who asked that question, raised her hand. But before I call on her, there's something that seems to tie so much together with this that I want to bring up. Attorney Williams said the information was, that this was very informative. But as there been a study that compared how children of immigrants turned out in adulthood and that of second-generation American children or indigenous US population. Has there been a study that compared this at all?
So there are emerging studies. I don't know if one that I would say is conclusive, but there are emerging studies. And emerging, yes.
So they are in the progress.
Yes, emerging studies, yeah. Emerging studies. So I cannot speak definitely, what's the word I'm missing? Definitively on that.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
That's the word I was looking for.
But the studies have been done right now.
A lot of studies now. And so I think maybe in the next year or two, we'll be able to have enough studies to be able to make a very firm conclusion, right? But what I know for sure now is when we have children who are first generation Americans, right? Whether they're coming from Mexico or they're coming from Africa, whatever, they have to bear the brunt. It's more like you have to bear the brunt of trying to pick yourself up and also trying to fit into this new system. And then if you have children, they're also torn between two worlds, trying to make it happen here and trying to make it happen there. And there's a lot of pressure that comes with that kind of position. Whenever you are in the middle, right, you have to take care of this, it's more like you're a sandwich generation or a sandwich parent. You have to cater to both sides. And that will only take a lot out of you. But in order to overcome that, it's almost like someone has to pay the price. The person that comes first has to pay a higher price. And then once they pay the price, as next generation, it becomes lighter, it becomes easier as the generations go down. So that's what the preliminary research is finding when it comes to outcomes, wellness, and all of that. Just because we come in with a lot of struggles, a lot of issues, a lot of trying to adjust. And before you adjust, if you come in when you're in your 20s or 30s, by the time you're fully adjusted, you're in your midlife or you're past your midlife, right? And so, but then if you pay the price, then your children coming behind you are better positioned because now they know the opportunities, they learn from your mistakes, and then they can make all those things. Whereas those who are already here, if they take advantage of those opportunities, they tend to be ahead of the game, right? Of course, some of them don't take advantage of it. They get into all kinds of issues, but that's a different story. If you're looking at, people who want to progress, who are well-minded and want to progress in life, then it takes maybe a second or third generation immigrant to be able to begin to even catch up with those who are already here and are well-intentioned and have been prepared ahead of time. People come and they already have, by the time you come here, some kids already have a trust fund. They are set for life. From the day they were born, they are set for life. You can't touch that. You can't compete with that. But when you come in, you have to be able to work hard to pay for that ticket, because maybe somebody, a whole village, had to come up with the ticket money for you, right? Or there are a lot of responsibilities back home. You have to send remittances, whereas those here don't have to worry about that. Some of the things that we worry about, people from here, they don't have to send money home. I mean, people who are raised here and live here, they don't. So we have different challenges. But if we come in and we pay the price, then we can pave the way for the people behind us, and it gets easier. That's what the studies are finding.
Thank you. So, Auntie Susan, go ahead, ma'am. Thank you, ma. Welcome, ma. Unmute, ma. You're still muted. There you go.
Am I okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Welcome, ma.
Thank you very much for a very nice evening and a very encouraging one. Dr. Lu, I doff my hat. You are very nice and keep on doing what you are doing. But there are a few things. I have to thank God first that I have 4 kids that I had to train from their teenage years in Nigeria to here in their adulthood. And to God be the glory that they have all come out well. All 4 of them are married and have their own families. But I have one thing that always bothered me about you, learned educationist here. You keep complaining about us yelling. That yelling is not yelling. We just raise our voices. We just let the children know that raising your voice is to lay emphasis, and then it depends on how well you communicate with your children. I think the first and foremost thing should be first, ask God to intervene in the way you bring up your children. Whatever you say, let it land properly in their ears. That's the number one thing. Number 2 is communication. Be their friend. No matter how old, no matter how young, let there be a direct channel where you can communicate. Once that channel is open all the time, all this yelling, I will yell. I will continue to yell, even on my grandchildren. And by the grace of God, I have 11 of them. I will continue to yell so that they will hear and they will understand. The only thing unfortunately, I cannot do, which is even recommended in the Bible, is spare the rod and spoil the child. I'm not able to spank them, but I can punish them. I can make them go up and down with their ears down and up, and they won't have any stain on their skin or any denture in their anything. But they will learn. They have to learn, because you see, when our parents spanked us, it was all to let us know that they don't have to repeat this thing 2 times, 4 times, 6 times. By the time they say it's the first and the second time, you have gotten it. But here they don't get it. The children don't get it. So I want you to find a way of including that yelling, that raising of voice, and that spanking, if it can come back to the system. Because otherwise, it is the government taking care of our children and parenting them where they don't have the know-how. So those are my please.
Excellent points, ma. Sister Tina wrote, I think it depends on the upbringing. So I'll give it to you. So please address.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sure. So I'll say,
she made a good point. Excellent point.
Thank God that you have your kids and your grandkids, which is awesome. But I want to go to the yelling, right? So that we have degrees of yelling. I don't know if you know that. There is a yell which is more like raising your voice, and there's a real yell where it's a squeaking noise. It can actually give you a headache. So, I mean, when you raise your voice, it's different. But when you yell like the real African yelling, screaming, the thing is that, if you have a lot of, I would say, factors to that. If you have a child who is sensitive, you've lost them, right? And you're yelling, yelling, yelling. It doesn't really do much to build them. And if you find that you always have to yell before they listen to you, maybe there are other things you can consider for them to listen to you that doesn't involve always yelling, right? That's something to consider. And then also, sometimes, I know families where the parents yell so much, it doesn't even mean anything anymore. So they say, oh, my mom will yell. And the child will still not do what you've asked them to do. But I like the point you raised about communication. And at the beginning of the presentation, I talked about that. Communication is so important. Having that relationship, because we think that if we're close to them, then they won't respect us. It depends on how you manage that closeness, right? So there's a way you can manage a relationship where they can come to you, can be close to them, but you're still in charge. So that's authoritative parenting. You are still in charge, but they're not afraid to come to you. We want them to be able to come to us and to say, sometimes they say, I got it wrong. I mean, mom, you're right. Or dad, you're right. Got it wrong. But you want to get to that point where you don't have to yell before they get it. So that becomes the goal, because what's going to happen? They also, in the absence of any mediating factors, they also are going to pass the yelling on to the next generation and the next and the next and the next and next. But there's another way to do it that may not always involve yelling. So that's something to consider, right? That's one thing. But yes, I agree with you. Having that relationship is important. As far as spanking, when we say spare the rod and spoil the child, I know that our first definition or first inclination is to get the cane and to use that. On this side of the world, I don't know if we get to a place where it will be an officially accepted method of correction. It's seen more as punishment. And to be honest, sometimes when we get the cane, we actually inflict a lot of pain on our children. And there's a difference. Sometimes we don't know the difference between discipline and punishment, right? So when you're punishing your children, that is when the time does not fit the crime, for lack of a better expression. When you're punishing them, the time does not, you're overdoing it. But when you're correcting them, then the punishment befits the crime, okay? So you're doing it in perspective. But if you're just taking it out, and if you always have to spank someone before they listen to you, you always have to, go to that extreme before they listen to you, then it's something else. You can just, like a simple spank but not like to the point of wounds and cuts and the way some of us were spanked. That doesn't necessarily achieve a certain, they'll be afraid of you for sure, if that's your goal. They'll be fearful of you, if that's what you wanted. But when they get older, there will be that level of resentment and anger. So you really, really want to be careful about those extremes. I mean, very, 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 very careful. I'd say that if we discipline our children, and if we do a lot of that, discipline and having that constant communication reduces the need for punishment, because you've already established the foundation right from the start, and you have been consistent as a parent, right? Because again, they are listening with their eyes and not their ears, right? So all of that, and sometimes we sometimes are part of the problem. I say this and that, and you're not consistent, and all of those things, and it's confusing, and there's so many other dynamics going on around them. But we ought to pay attention to every part of it and not be quick to say, I'm going to spank you, or no. How about the spanking? We don't ask questions. We don't like, but you don't want to ask questions, and you want to think about it a little bit different. That's what I was saying.
See, I like your perspective from that emotional aspect. Attorney Tino, Medical Monday's family is just so awesome because we have all the tools we need. She's a lawyer. She's coming from the perspective of the law. And Auntie, she's saying that you can spank. You just must not hurt or harm them. It's the same thing in, just differentiating between disciplining and punishment. They're different things. So just, a comment there. But I know that Madam VP, Auntie Lara has raised her hand, and I know it's still in the same context. I can guess, and I think my guess will be right. Go ahead.
Yeah, I am calling regarding spanking and yelling. So, we know that we have to meet in the middle. while we have to kind of modify our behavior, I think the children too have to modify their expectation and meet us in the middle. Dr. O and I had the privilege of going to the Smithsonian African Museum, and we saw a lot of things, the history of our grandparents, how they came. So it makes sense that our grandparents that came here, they were not yelling, because when you see the way they were packed in sardine, there's no way to yell. They have to whisper to each other. So they kind of learn to tone down their own tone. But those of us that are still coming up fresh off the boat from Africa, yelling is because we have a high-pitched tone. It's not even when we're excited, we yell, say, ah, Irani. We're not yelling at anybody in particular. It's just how we talk. That's how we talk. It's not always harmful, and it's not always threatening or intimidating. And the children also, at least they have to give something to us, not demonize everything that we do or even our parenting style. Because and I like the question that Dr. Craig asked, that is there any data that says that prefers one style over the other? I'm sure not, because there's no silver bullet about how you're supposed to parent. There's no one thing that can fix it all. It's just about balancing. And I like the fact, one of the things I learned most from your presentation is that chart that you shared. Because we didn't know the needs of different age. We just reacted most of the time based on our own instincts. We had no knowledge about, okay, this is what they need at this age, this is what they need at this stage, this is what that's missing in whatever we did. But hey, I love the question that my other sister asked about, how do we redo? How do we go back? There's always ways to do damage control, and your answer was spot on. We start to build a relationship instead of trying to wiggle our way in and imposing our will. So thank you so much again for this opportunity. And Dr. O, I can't thank you enough. I don't know. You always find that little nugget in the pot. Somehow you wake up in the morning and you find that rare gem and you bring it to Medical Monday. We are so blessed. Happy holidays to all of you.
The Lord. Thank you so much. And it's all of us. We all are Medical Mondays with Dr. O family. So we praise God. Thank you so much for your comment and summarizing a whole slew of what has been discussed so far. Appreciate you, man. Dr. Azuma wrote in the platform about menopause, and I must tell you, she's an OBGYN. So she should know. She said, laughingly, menopause to take care of kids. So menstruating moms don't take care of their kids. So you answered the question on the other spectrum, on the other end. You said some mothers are still, some grandmothers, are still menstruating. And so they take care of kids. She's saying that so menstruating mothers don't take care of their kids. So don't talk about grandmothers. What about mothers who are still menstruating? They are taking care of their kids. So, but laugh aloud. That was fun. And I want to drop down to Dr. Akintonde, because Dr. Akintonde then said that we need to discuss another topic, that we need to discuss the topic of menopause and topic on menopause from biological and social point of view. Dr. Akintonde is a male, a man. I found it very exciting that, is interested in us discussing issues of women, menopause from the standpoint of biological and social point. So we're going to get Dr. Azuma to come do that for us in the near future, in 2023, so that we can address that topic. Thank you so much, Dr. Akintonde. Sister Tina has her hand raised. People who have their hand raised have the privilege to go first, and I'll read the chat box as, in between. Sister Tina, go ahead.
Yes, good evening. Thank you so much for inviting me to this wonderful meeting. It's really very educative. I'm also a grandmother also. And one of the things that I do with my grandchildren is I always ask my son if I'm to do something with them, because it's just a sign of respect. Just asking him, oh, is it okay for me to do this with them, or is it okay not to? Because I don't want to I don't want to step on his toes. I want to make sure that he understands that yes, he's my son, and it is a mutual respect. Some people think that is wrong because we come from Nigeria and all that, but my case is a little bit different. I only lived in Nigeria for 10 years, and I wasn't born in Nigeria. So, and my parents were, we always talked, like everything was negotiable with them. And I sometimes my friends see me when I'm talking to my parents or talking to my mom, and my mom lives with me. They say, "Oh, you're rude to your mom," because when she's talking, I'm also trying to express myself, and she's like, "Yeah, I need you to say what's on your mind. Just don't stand there and take everything that I say." So, I just wanted people to know that sometimes you have to seek your children's opinion when raising their kids, because you are a grandmother. You're not the parent, and you want to make sure that you draw that line. So that's what I wanted to say. Thanks for giving me the floor.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Do you have any comments, or
can I respond to that?
Yes,
to
please.
that, and also what the person who spoke before her, I think, I don't remember her name. I'm so sorry.
Auntie Lara, yeah.
But you're talking about parenting styles, and there isn't a preferred parenting style or what. But when you look at all the books on parenting, and I think the most notable one is the one by Diana Baumrind, the authoritative parenting style is the most preferred. The question the other person asked was slightly different from what you said, but authoritative parenting, where there is that dialogue, is the most preferred. In that authority, so your overarching parenting style is one. Authoritative simply means that you create space, you welcome perspectives, you understand people. It doesn't mean that you necessarily agree, but you want to raise children that are not afraid to ask questions, or not afraid to have a relationship with you, or to have a dialogue with you. Now, in that authoritative parenting style, when our kids are younger, obviously, when they're just born, you're not going to ask them questions about what you want to eat. They're too young to answer that question. So it might seem like you are making decisions for them. So more like, quote unquote, it might appear as though you're being authoritarian in that sense, because in that moment, they cannot make that decision, right? Also, if there's imminent danger, let's say you're trying to cross the road, or your kid is trying to cross the road by themselves, and you can see that there's a car coming, you're not going to stand and begin to negotiate. Oh, let's talk about this car coming down at full speed. What do you think? Do you want to move? No, you're not. In that moment, you're going to take them away, because it's imminent danger. It's not danger that you are assuming or making up. It's real danger. You're going to scoop them out of the danger, get them to safety, and then once they're at safety, you can begin to talk about why I scooped you out, and let them tell you how, oh, I feel frustrated, I feel afraid, or whatever, right? So it might appear as though in all those four things that maybe there might be a moment here and there where you're authoritarian, or you're uninvolved, or you're permissive. There's a moment here and there, depending on the circumstance. But overall, you are authoritative. And the reality is, the older our children become, the more authoritative we have to become. The older they become, the more you want to have a dialogue with them. You cannot say my way or the highway, right? Because they have to sometimes make those little mistakes, right? So they're supposed to go to bed. I like to use this example. They're supposed to be at the bus stop, or wake up early and be at the bus stop by 7, because if not, they're going to miss their bus. And for whatever reason, they choose to go to bed late. They get to the bus stop and it's 7:10, and the bus is gone. So that mistake they have to learn, right? They learn from that mistake. The bus leaves them. What do you have to do? They get to school late that day, or you have to drop them off, or they have to find something else. They have to see that consequence, right? There has to be consequence, but it doesn't have to be something dire where, they lose a limb because they made a mistake. And as a matter of fact, you want them to begin to make those little mistakes so they can learn from those little mistakes and hopefully avoid the much bigger ones. But the older our children become, the more authoritative, because you realize that they're growing humans, right? Who wants to be in a place where you never get to ask a question, because any attempt at asking a question is translated as you being rude? How are they going to be critical thinkers? How are they going to feel comfortable? How are they going to be able to speak in public, right? Or the reverse is, you're not going to engage them, no problem. The next person that engages them, they're going to gravitate towards that person, because at some point, everyone wants someone that will listen to them or will welcome them, even if it's wrong company, right? So you want that. So we have to be cognizant of that and create that space. And it's okay to create space for our kids. It doesn't mean that you are less of a parent or you're losing your influence. If anything, you're building your influence, you're building your relationship, because you're still in control, but they have a say. They have, they can give an input, little things, I want my room to be painted blue. Don't pick that battle. Let them win that battle. Don't say, well, it has to be green. In our family, we only paint green. So your room, we're going to paint it green whether you like it or not. I mean, let them have the blue room. You don't lose anything, right? Little things, pick the argument, little things. Let them have that thing, that space. But maybe if they want to do something else, I don't want to go to school anymore. That's a big one. We need to look into this, right? But let there be that invitation where they're not afraid. And that's the key thing, because we live in a time where there is the internet, there's a social media. It's not like our time when, you could have oversight, real oversight of what your kids is, and the punishment could be go to your room. Today, if you tell a kid, a teenager, go to your room, that's like the best gift you've given them, because a lot of things they can do in their room with their phone, that's the best gift ever. So that method doesn't work anymore, right? So we recognize that there's so many influences. If you're not talking to them, no, please no, someone else is talking to them. Wouldn't you rather be the one talking to them, right? Because it has to be a talk and someone else is talking to them. So, you want to see that there are so many battles. You want to be able to pick your battles and pick the important ones and be authoritative as much as possible. If you have to make a firm decision on certain things, at least you're giving them that leeway and that leverage. So it's very, very crucial to look at it from that broad perspective and not always be no, 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 no. You gotta look at it from that way.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Our big brother, Yomi Lawal. Unmute, sir. Unmute, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Welcome, sir.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for this topic. I didn't think I would have anything to say, but listening to everybody, something came to my mind. They say that if it's not broken, don't fix it. I just have to go back to when we were young in Nigeria. Whatever the parents say, it's what we do, or we did then. Especially the father. I never tried to question my dad. There were 13 of us in the family, and nobody dared. But we love our dad very much. We all did. He died very early, but we loved him so much. So, and we all behaved very well. So my question now is, the problem we're having now, is it environmental or is it generation? Because I'm just wondering, how do we get here? That we have to pamper our children, to talk to them, ask their opinion and just make choices? Or is it because we have very few children? Because in those days, we have so many children, I don't think that it's time to do all the things that we are trying to do now. And it's still not working well enough. Because we keep coming with how to make these kids behave the right way without punishing them too much. We are the one that is always adjusting as parents. And when we look down, even our own children now, what they do to their own children, it's even worse. I was listening to a conversation one time in my office. They were talking about what to get for the kids for Christmas. They couldn't think of anything because they have everything already. So they are agonizing how to figure out what to get them for Christmas. We didn't have that problem when we were growing up. So what's happening to us? Is it generation or is it environment? Even when I look at the kids in Nigeria now, I see similar things. And I also know that everybody just wants something from the parents, not giving back. Even my kid, one of them told me, I'm not going to have any kids because it's too much trouble. And I said, oh, really? Maybe she was joking. But that's the trend. That's what is happening. So we keep moving and moving and moving and moving for them. When are they going to get it? That's my question.
Thank you so much, sir. Dr. Luguterah, the floor is yours.
So to answer your question, I like the fact that you said looking at Nigeria, and I can also say looking back in Ghana. I know that Ghana, the way Ghana was when I was in primary school, is not the way it is now. You know, it is, a lot of it is environmental. I think I talked about nurture, right? Nature versus nurture. Nurture is your environment. And we were excited when we were introduced to the concept of globalization. We were excited when we were introduced to the concept of the internet. We were excited with Instagram, Facebook, all those things. Those things did not exist in our time, right? Or when we were in primary school. And so there's a level of influence. You could contain a lot of things, right? In your community, and you had a stronger control over things. And it was more intimate, it was more focused on your culture, your values, and all of that. There are a lot of things that we did differently. Cooking by the firewood, having this community dance going out in the evening, and the people just randomly dancing or singing or playing soccer in the dust and all those, just having that kind of fun, organic fun, which is very, very therapeutic as well. And also a sense of community, building community, right? So there was that. But that going back to that world is not possible, except in certain very remote places. Because now, wherever we are, wherever we live, whether it's Ghana or here or UK, wherever we live, whether we like it or not, one of the cons of media is the influence that it has. Like within 5 minutes of something happening, it becomes global news. Everyone hears about it. A celebrity passes, in 5 minutes, the world over has heard about it. Something negative, something positive. So this is the technological age, and there is a downside to that, where people are heavily influenced, right? And if we know, and we also know that socialization or just seeing things over and over again, that's how people pick up attitudes or attributes or lifestyles or perceptions and all of that. It comes with its own form of challenge. So asking about those times don't exist, right? Even in our own country, if you go there now, it doesn't exist that way. Now, I'll give you an example. After living in Ghana for a number of years and I moved here, I didn't go back until after 6 years or so. And, I didn't suffer from malaria as much as I can remember. I wasn't sick. It wasn't any of those things, right, that I can really remember. So when it was time to visit, I was told, you need to go get your shots, go take your malaria thing, take your this. Like, no, I'm going back to my country. I don't need it. I'm fine. I mean, I lived there for many years. Why do I have to take that? I'm good. It's my country. I'm going back home. I should be fine. I did not take it. I managed to make it into Ghana. I went to the same places, same things, everything. I got sick to the point that I had to be hospitalized, right? I had to spend some time in the hospital. That's how sick I was. So I am the same person, but what has changed? I had moved to a different environment. And without knowing it, I had compromised certain things. So going back to that environment, it was no longer me, because by virtue of being away for some time, certain things have changed. And if I want to go back there, I need to make an adjustment to be able to fit in that environment, right? Whereas someone who has always been there, that person is not going to be sick. That's where they live. But once you move out of it and there's a shift, you also have to make a shift to accommodate it. So there are two ways to look at it. You can look at it as, oh, our kids are controlling us, or you can see it as an opportunity to say, for me, for my household, for my kids, knowing what is going on around, I'm going to be a bit more intentional. These are my values. I'm going to bring it to my kids. I'm going to surround them. There are people that share similar values with you. You just have to dig deeper. And there's a lot more work for us on this side. You know, I spoke earlier about intentional parenting. When we are back home, we get a lot of support, families and this, communities, but over here, that support is not really there, which is why your kids said they don't want to have kids, because it is true. It's a lot of work. It's expensive if you want to take them to a good school. There's a lot of pressure that comes with that, but this is the reality. And people are still raising healthy, well-balanced children. So it's not like a hopeless situation. Like I said earlier, the people born here, they don't even believe in God, but they have been raised and surrounded by certain values and by certain principles that they are kind, they are giving, they volunteer. It's just part of their nature. They know what to do, what is important. So they are living in what I say a challenging environment, but some way, somehow, they've been able to get to the core of what really matters. So if you're going to say, well, this happened to us in our past, and so, we don't understand why it's not that way anymore. Reality is, it's not that way. And as long as we live here, it's not going to be that way, not with the influence of social media. Those are the cons of it, right? It comes with these pros, but there are lots of cons. And if we don't, if we're not cognizant of that when we're raising our children, we're going to lose out in a lot of things. There are things you cannot control, right? So that you put that in pile A. But pile B are things that you can control. What is it that you can control when it comes to your parenting? What is that you can control? You can teach your own children, right? That's your own village. You can teach your children. You can try to make that impact or that difference. You can control those things. By the wider picture, you may not be able to, but you can do your part and recognize that we don't own them, like I said from the start. We are responsible for our children, but we don't own them. We don't even own our lives. And they're going to grow and they're going to go. That's how it's supposed to be. You grow, you go. The next person, you grow, you go, and then they continue. We are responsible, but we don't own them. So we have to look at it from that broad perspective to say, this is where we are. We're spending dollars here, not Naira. And so we have to be able to make that shift as well.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. I'm going to bring Dr. Azuma up while I'm getting other things together on the platform. Dr. Azuma just asked or suggested that would you do a book reading to children, and that we can do it in January with your book. I posted your book, and guess what? She provided the link. How you guys do these things? I need to learn. She put the link right there. So people can just, as soon as this is done, I'm going to click on that link so I can go to the link. She put the link there right there and then. I put your book up there, The Red Horse. And she's OBGYN. She has a program for young children, Dr. Azuma, kindly unmute. And let me don't say too much. You come talk yourself, So she has a heart and a passion for the young girls. She does a lot in missions, in healthcare, and all, even outside of the country. She just came from Kenya, giving back. So already she's thinking, how do we benefit our children? Dr. Azuma, unmute. There you go.
Can you see me?
The floor is yours. Go ahead.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. This is an amazing platform. Thank you, Dr. O. This is just, I think all African grandparents should have watched this. We need to make sure we share it. Is it on YouTube? It's on YouTube already?
It's on YouTube already. It's streaming as we speak. It's streaming live. Yeah.
Okay. We have to make it go viral. It's so important. It really is. Thank you, Dr. L. Thank you, Dr. O, for hosting this. Just to support you, Dr. L, I was suggesting that we do like a book reading. it will be a good conversation between you mothers and children. If you're comfortable doing it. One, book reading, you would increase your sales, right? Because we need to make sure you're doing very well. We need to make sure we're supporting you, because that's the right thing to do. And like she said, I work with a lot of young girls. I do have like 2 nonprofit. One, Love Your Menses, and this is just a great information. Hopefully I'll get your information from Dr. O so we can connect. But I think a book reading and just preparing parents on how to raise their kids. I have written like 20 quotes from you that I'm sharing with my friends. Like just a lot. I wish I was tweeting it, but it's so cool. We are responsible for our children, but we do not own them. When we come to the US, we must convert in the way we parent, as we've converted from Naira to the dollars. Children observe us when we are not talking, so our behaviors and actions should be consistent. Having kids in America is so hard. We can financially afford to care for them, but are we emotionally available? It's like tweets. It's like, this is amazing. I mean, I'm so happy I get to log in. Thank you so much, Dr. O. Thank you. Vice President, thank you. Everybody here, thank you for being open. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And Attorney Tinu, look, when she tells you something, take it to the bank. She said, we'll be there to help you do the book reading, Dr. L. She's already accepting for you. I see you nodding that yes, we'll do it, but she already saying yes, we'll be there to do it for you, and she will be. This is fantastic. I am excited about that. I look forward to that, and we'll leave you and Dr. Azuma to work out the details, and we'll be able to do that. And of course, I'll be there. And I'll create the platform, and we can get it done. So our big brother, Yomi Lawal, has spoken already, put together what is said in a nutshell. But in the platform, people are thanking you. Sister Tinu said, "Preach it, sister. We love you. We appreciate your candor." They appreciate your openness and what you have taught us. She also said, though, regarding submission, she's a lawyer, and I always respect a perspective that she brings to us to help us understand even deeper things and in the law area. She said submission is actually different from subjugation. Remember, I said then that this is a topic that is a topic by itself that we have to treat by itself. She said most times when African men say they want submissive women, they actually mean subjugation. Only slaves are subjugated. If we are in a relationship like family situation, there shouldn't be subjugation of any spouse. And she said, we have to start them young. She's absolutely right, and that's what you preach tonight, starting young, and that, what we do in moderation, our children will do in excess. So we need to watch it. They're watching. It's not just what we say. They're watching. Sister Rosemary, you can unmute. She has her hand raised. And thank you for introducing me to Dr. Luguterah. Thank you so much. Unmute, please.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Sister Mercy. I call her Sister Mercy because she's a Jesus House member, and she's in the choir also.
Wow.
Thank you so much. You did so well. I really appreciate it. My own thing is that, everyone should raise a child that they would like to have a relationship with in the future. Okay. Do not wait until the children become an adult before you want to start having a relationship with them. So they are watching you, whatever thing you're doing. To tell you the truth, let's just go back to the basic. Before you get married, know who you are. Find out your own identity. When you are able to do that, when you have start raising children, you would make sure that they find their own identity also. If you have not learned how to discipline yourself, there's no way you can be able to teach your children how to discipline themselves. So the children, because in Africa, we would say that the children should do what we say, not what we do. They're actually watching you, and they are doing what you're doing. I just came back from California when I went to see my daughter. Got into her house, her refrigerator is filled up with food. This girl, she cooks. Because when they were growing up in my house, I don't know how to go to a hamburger to buy hamburger for my children or pizza for my children. I made sure that they ate cooked food. So they followed, that's the same thing she's doing right now in California with her brother also. So the kids are constantly watching us. We have become so busy that we are not there to really teach these children what they need. We have to become very intentional about teaching them what they're going to carry out for the rest of their lives. We are building these children. These children are not supposed to be saying, please, let us be deliberate about this. Pay attention to your children, teach them things, develop relationship with them. The other lady that was asking how you can make relationship with an adult or whatever. Look, when you want to start the relationship with them, please start the relationship with yourself. Get to have relationship with yourself. Know thyself. And then when your self-esteem is healthy, you can start developing a relationship with the grown-up kids, because they're gonna reject you. Be ready for that rejection. But guess what? Love will overcome everything, because the Bible says, love suffereth long and is kind. Love believes all things, it hopes all things. Once you have that unconditional love for that child and for yourself, you'll be able to resist that rejection. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. For people who don't know, Sister Rosemary herself is a counselor, and she's coming from that place of counseling. Thank you so much. You know, Dr. V from California, my sister from Cali, and the NEPAC chair over there in California said, guidance and discipline versus punishment is a way of creating effective communication and building character, as well as self-regulation, etc. And she has her hand raised. I'm giving you 2 minutes. So please unmute, Dr. V. Unmute. You're still muted. Dr. V, unmute.
Oh God, this is
There you
evil.
go.
The unmute button hid itself. So thank you for thank you. This is so healthy and it's on my lane. And my Montessori colleague, awesome job with all the guidance and stuff that you've brought to life.
He's a professor. Also.
Oh, well, hello, my co-professor. So, you've covered every base, but I wanted to remind us of a virtue. And I'm referencing a lot of the perspective that we need to not forget where we came from. Well, as I grew older, raising my 4 children, I realized how powerful our proverb is. In fact, sometimes they'll say, I know mom's going to throw in a proverb. So let's go back to that guidance and discipline using a proverb, because it's really about how our parents built rationale by you hearing proverbs. Yoruba say aboro non so form oluwabi. When it gets in there, it forms a whole. It's so true. So let's also, in that, going back to the biblical,
you've got to interpret that.
Okay. So basically, Proverbs actually is a way of representing rationale and understanding of why you need to do things a certain way. Eventually, it kind of forms a sense of practice and self-regulation for you, because you reference that proverb and it tells you all what you need to know. There's another proverb in Anioma that says the way that they treat the other person, the victim, tells you all much about what would happen when you do the same. So those are all ways that they talk to us as when we were young that I think we should add to everything that was said here. Let's go back to that rationale building by giving our children of proverbs. And everything else, I agree. Thank you, Dr. O. This is phenomenal.
We can hear you, Dr. O. Unmute.
Now my mute button decided to do its own. Thank you so very much. I appreciate
Thank
it.
you for all that you do. You are awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you, sis.
Auntie Susan, did you raise your hand again? Unmute, ma. Unmute.
I was going to translate the Aboro for Dr. V.
Go ahead, ma.
Thank you, ma.
Yes.
It just simply means that you don't have to tell a child the full story. All you have to say is just to say one or two things, and the child will be able to develop on that.
100% yes, ma. That's true.
That child so much as to not to use all your mouth to say the thing. All you have to say is either even look. You can just look at that child and he or she understands. And the other proverb I was going to also give was not your money. That is
exactly.
Go remember whose child or whose family that you have come from.
Yes.
Anywhere you go, just remember whose child you are. When you remember where you are from, you dare not misbehave. You dare not do anything that is not acceptable by the family, not just your mother or your father, but your family. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, ma'am. Oh my gosh. And I want to thank you. And Susan, look, we, Femi and Yobadejo came, asked that we support him to do this program every day. It's like 2 seconds to answer the questions every day. Auntie Susan tried, register that problem. She contacted me, that was fixed. And then she stopped getting the prompts. She contacted me again and there was a problem. She was the reason now why the problem was fixed. But she wasn't the only one that contacted. Somebody else contacted me after she did. And I just cannot help but say thank you, because this is what we're all about. We're not getting a dime for this, but we're supporting a brother to take him to higher heights. We need to support each other. We need to build each other up. Look at Dr. Azuma tonight, heard Dr. Luguterah and said, wait a minute, we can do something bigger and better. We can better position you. Please, we need to have that mindset. And you know what? It's totally in line with what we are talking about, because our children will see these traits in us and they would emulate it and be supporting each other, us also, and that way we'll be moving our whole community forward into greatness. We will position ourselves better. We should stop, the crab mentality that some people think is attributed mainly to Black people. I won't say just Africans, Black people. No, we are not crabbers. We don't have that mentality. We don't have that culture. We have the culture of building each other. Dr. Luguterah came last week. She blew me off the water. I'm like, you coming again next week? Yes, she is. In order to impact us positively and to, educate us, make us better, improve us. Please, let's continue to do that for each other. And my sister Funke said, awesome presentation. Knowing and accepting each child as unique individual helps a great deal in raising children. She's right on point, but the same thing with knowing each other also and, building each other up. Hammond came, Dr. Luguterah Hammond is on Zoom from London. So you can imagine what time he is there. He said, thank you for your support with the health initiative. I am now receiving the prompts too. So she is participating in the prompts that was talked about. And it's almost done. It's still the end of the year. So while talking about the end of the year, before we conclude tonight, I just want to say that I realized Christmas is Sunday. Can you believe it? Already. It's been a year though. It's been a year. At least for me, it has been. But I'm going to thank God for everything that has happened. So we we're not going to have medical Mondays on Monday, so that we can have, people who celebrate on Sunday can, take a chill day on Monday. And we would take off again on the 2nd of January because of the way, the holidays roll, or the fall. So we'll resume medical Mondays on January 9th. And while we are doing that, it doesn't mean that we're sitting, chilling, doing nothing. Please contact me if you have somebody can further us, can bless us. Contact me so that we can bring them on while we're planning for 2023. If you're interested in certain topics that you want us to address, let me know, because we'll bring the experts. And Dr. Famuyiwa specifically said I should ask. Dr. Famuyiwa is a fertility specialist, that if you have an area in fertility you want her to address, please let her know. She's eager to, come present. So please let me know. You can let me know by text. You can let me know by email, whichever. Dr. V, go ahead. You have your hand raised.
Really quickly, kind of almost like an alarm I want to raise on this topic. I have gone to court with families, Nigerian families, who have been spanking their children. And I just want to kind of sound a note of warning. I go as an expert for educator and all that in the court. And then I kind of vouch for them that I will train them on guidance and discipline and ways for you to build, like my sister said, relationships versus fear. So I just want to say, yes, I really respect a cultural perspective. And actually, there's no law that says that spanking is a crime. Now, spanking with any impact on the child, that means physical, mental, they see some kind of anything that affects the child as you're spanking, then we have a problem. CPS will not come out because you spanked your child, but they will come out if your spanking impacted the child in any way, shape, or form, including the child complaining to the teacher, which is how our parents have gotten in trouble. I've seen people almost lose their nursing license because they spanked their child, and they have to go through like a couple years of working with me and the court. So it's actually serious. So the spare the rod and spoil the child, we have to be careful how we implement that. A lot, I think, was learned listening to the expert, because the expert didn't say, no, throw away what you know. But the whole point is building rationale, building relationship, helping your child understand what's safe, what's right, and also self-regulation, because that's what our parents did when they spank and do all that, is to create self-regulation so you can monitor yourself when they're not there. And like our mommy said, even a look will tell you what not to do and what to do. So it's moderation and sensible parenting. And we never mean to harm our child, but there are things we do that actually mentally or physically might be harmful. So if we need guidance on that, you might talk to experts around your area on how to balance that. Because I do believe there's a lot that our parents did right, that we learned, but there are things that in a way that you do it, depending on who you are, it becomes harmful, and you can actually get in trouble with the law. I just want to quickly say that it's not enough time to go into detail, but I want to say, if you're living here and saying, let me go do the Bible, spare the rod thing, be careful as you move forward on it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that insight. Thank you. We have to obey the law, and we've learned a lot tonight. When the Bible does say, spare the rod and spoil the kid, and the word of God is true. But thank God that Dr. Luguterah had gone over different ways of how not to spare the rod. See, the rod is not always taking a cane and spanking a child. There are many ways to do it. And our Auntie Susan even gave us an example of how she disciplines without using the rod. So Dr. V, thank you so much for bringing that to the forefront, because we should not live here and not get it. We need to get that. None of us will get into trouble in Jesus' name. So, Dr. Luguterah, can you give us some final words, please?
I'm not sure what more to say, but parenting is a journey, right? It's not a destination. So you don't get to a place where you say, "Oh, I've parented, so I'm done. I'm not parenting anymore." You're once a parent, forever a parent, right? Because you're always impacting, and whenever you have people around you that you're older than and you have the opportunity to speak to them, you can consider yourself a parent. It's all about raising the next generation, paying it forward in so many different ways, and just being intentional, right? There's this thing where, maybe for some of us, it was time to have a family, so we had a family, right? Because that's just the next thing you got to do. You're a certain age, you got to get married. Okay, now you have a kid. Okay, now you do this, and you're just going with emotion. But I think it's a great time to really consider a lot of things. And when we are raising our kids, not to give them that thing where, okay, you are this age, so the next thing you have to do this. Our world has changed a lot. We want to have people that are healthy, that really understand their purpose, their perspective, what you're doing. And so we want to pass on to them something that is more valuable, a real legacy, right? Not just in the number of children or grandchildren we have, but in the impact, the kind of people that we have put into the world. So when you're looking back, the way we're raising our children now, 20 years, 30 years down the line, who are they going to be? That child could be your next door neighbor, could be your grandchild's teacher, could be your doctor, could be whatever. So think in that perspective, what kind of a person are they going to be? Are you putting out a good one out there? Are you being intentional? And also realizing that, like we talked about, our African background, there are lots of value to that. But we have to look beyond the practice and look at the principle. I think that's where sometimes we get lost. Look at the principle. What was the reason behind some of the things that parents did? So their way of doing it might have been wrong, but the mindset or the intention behind that is still relevant. So can we look at that principle and make it in such a way that it actually benefits the children? And last but not the least, it's okay to have a relationship with your child. It's okay for your children to ask you questions. In fact, you want them to ask you, because if they're not asking you, they are asking someone else. They have so many options today. They could easily go to anyone else. So when they come to you, you're actually blessed that they're talking to you, right? So seize that opportunity, make it memorable. Be like that prodigal son, right? When he left home and people say, well, I did everything right, and they left home. If you really did, when they leave home, the experience that they have outside of the home will always pale in comparison with the experience they had at home. So that no matter how far they go, when they come back to their senses, they would say, you know what? The home experience is something that nothing here can give me that feeling. I better go back. That experience will draw them back to you. That experience will bring them back to you. But if it's an experience of yelling, of not feeling loved, of not having a say, then even when they mess up, they're not going to come back because they feel that the doors are shut. But we leave our doors open. We give them a space. We give them opportunity. You're always there for them, even when we have to correct them or redirect them. And like the prodigal son, if they do go astray, they will come back because that experience you gave them, they will not find it anywhere else. So let's look at it more like being emotionally available, being intentional, and really paying it forward, because we need a lot of well-grounded people.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Everything you said, I didn't say too much about my family tonight, but I just want to say that I feel like I'm now the child. The children are now my parents. And it ticks me off sometimes. They tell me when to sleep, when to eat, when not to eat. How many times have you eaten? Have you done this? You need to do this. I'm traveling somewhere, and one of them told me once, who did you tell? Who did you take permission from? And I'm like, okay, look, I have a daughter at home. She thinks she's my mom. And one day when I said, excuse me, do you know who you're talking to? I'm your mom. She said, you know how you take care of grandma and handle grandma? Guess what? The tables are now turned. I had no words. I didn't know what to say. But you know what? I praise God for them. I want to thank my daughter one day, because you see how my backflow or whatever is lit. She was the one who provided the light, and she would make sure that I'm fine, not just on Medical Mondays, but everywhere. So I really want to appreciate her and thank God for her, an awesome daughter. And I want to thank my brother and sister, Pastor and Pastor, Doctor and Doctor, Ephraim and Hannah Ajay. Medical Mondays running year after year. It's the Lord and them standing by me and being the core that is making it run. Every week they're here, they're recording, they're doing Facebook, they make, when I mess up on YouTube, they assisting. I just want to say thank you to them for another wonderful Medical Mondays with Dr. O year. And I want to thank Jennifer Jones and Dr. Cap, who we started this together. God is good. God has been good. And so with that, I want to wish all of us a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and trusting the Lord that we will get into the new year in excellent health with all our loved ones along with us. I also want to encourage you to still be careful. COVID is still very much around. Flu is raging its war, and there's RSV. So let's still be careful as we celebrate. And we at Medical Mondays with Dr. O wish you strong health and strong future. Thank you so much. And thank you, Dr. Luguterah, for helping us round up this year. God bless you. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Happy
Merry
holidays.
Christmas. Thank you.
And when you're celebrating, you can watch past episodes on YouTube.